Коллеги, добрый день.
A very good afternoon, dear colleagues. I suggest we start our discussion. All the key panel speakers are there. We also have a lot of members of the audience. We're very happy to welcome you at our annual forum that we are holding for the third time in a row in Sochi. Sochi is traditionally welcoming us by warm, sunny weather and special hospitality. And I guess all that combined together creates a unique atmosphere that supports us in our work and interesting discussions. So today we start our discussion on fast payments, the world and us. Indeed, that is one of the most accurate issues on today's agenda. First and foremost, allow me to introduce our distinguished speakers that will participate in today's discussion. With us is Arjen Galston, Managing Director for Business Development at Vocalink Company. Vladimir Komlev, Chairman of the Board and CEO of National Payment Card System, the operator of the Mir Payment System. Yekaterina Petelina, Country Manager of Visa Russia. Roman Zilber, Head of Retail, Private Individuals and Small Enterprises Directorate, Raiffeisen Bank. Yekaterina Volenets, Head of Mobile Payment Systems, Samsung Electronics Russia. And Eli Lasker, Senior Market Manager at SWIFT. And myself, Alla Bakina, Director of the National Payment System Department, the Bank of Russia. We've been witnessing this trend for quite a while in the world. In many countries, the fast payment system is operating successfully, while at some countries it is still at the implementation stage and is about to be launched. Definitely broad diversification and spread of mobile apps and fast payments available for consumer is a key prerequisite for high demand of this service also here in Russia. Just a couple of numbers that confirm this fact. We see dramatic increase of non-cash transfers. In the 4 years from 2016 to the first half of 2018, this figure increased by more than 2 times, from 25% up to 54%. 97 out of 100 payments in 2017 were made by individuals remotely, and each fifth payment was done via internet or a mobile device. Creation of fast payment system in Russia is one of the key projects for development of the national infrastructure. Today, a number of players, and this issue was partially raised today, are already providing those services within their banking solutions or banking groups. However, it is very important that consumers and individuals have an opportunity to make interbank transfers quickly, easily, safely, and at a low cost. Fast payment system provides such an opportunity, and right now we're working together on such a system with the Bank of Russia, the National Payment System Association for Development of Financial Technologies, and banks that are participants of these systems. Implementation of this project would definitely contribute to higher financial accessibility of those services, higher security levels, which is particularly important in the modern situation, and that would generally enable all the stakeholders of the system to decrease their expenses. The technological platform is already developed by the National Payment System and the Bank of Russia. We've completed testing of this system successfully, and starting from November, a pilot group of banks will be testing it together with credit organizations. As for the opportunities offered by the system to the market and what should be taken into account, what are the possible threats and dangers, What is the way to take into account international best practices and experiences that vary dramatically from one country to another? And what are the ways to compete in doing that is something that we're going to discuss in our today's panel. And my first question goes to Vladimir Komlev. Operational and clearing functions of the created system will be delivered by the national payment card system. Vladimir, would you please share with us what is the approach to creation of infrastructure have you selected? Is it modernization of the existing system, the MIR payment system, or creation of a brand new system? What would be the advantages for the banks? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for giving me the floor. I very much enjoyed the name of the session, The World and Us, or maybe Mir and Us. Well, no, that is not the name of our payment system, Mir meaning world. We're happy to say that we're creating a brand new platform. More than that, the objective set to us was to create a system that can be separated from the national payment system and under certain conditions could operate and exist independently. However, at the current stage, we are using the technological solutions, knowledge and competences that we've acquired by working with card transactions. What I'm trying to say is that technologies and most advanced means of online processing of messages, the best we've learned is used in this new platform, but I'd like to emphasize that it is a brand new platform. It is principally different, and it requires new approaches and new principles of processing of informations. It is important to say that this system can be fully separated from us, and it is important to say that the operator of this national platform, this is a service of the level of the national payment system, an operator is naturally the Bank of Russia. We are just a technical provider that is doing that in a 24/7 mode with the highest tolerance of system, resistant tolerance of the system, and we need to provide for most efficient interaction between all the participants of the system and players of the market. Today we already defined the key standards, operational models and formats, and we are unfolding our data processing centers, and for that we truly use the best available resources and IT experts that we have at our disposal. And certainly we keep track of the international practices, not just from the viewpoint of certain technological solutions, but we're also interested in a negative experience, what failed to work, and what are the mistakes we can avoid. The key aspect in this regard is that success or failure of the system and fast payments as such is conditioned by several factors, and it was very interesting to listen to the plenary session today. There was a lot of heated arguments for and against fast payment system in Russia, the way it exists today with the dominant role of Sberbank, and how it should be developing, and what is the role of the regulator and the operator of this payment system, and the new ecosystem that is being created. However, it's clear that we need a very simple and user-friendly experience. The key thing is that it is very easy for the user and favorable for the user to do that kind of operations. I might be covering someone else's presentations, but I cannot. But I'm willing to say that, how are you going to do that? You have a payment card system, you have this system. How are you going to divide the market? Well, I'm very certain that fast payment system would be eating a bit of the pie from the cash payments. And I think it is in our shared interests it is within the interest of the regulator, within the interest of the Russian economy, to develop one more efficient and reliable channel that would eliminate excessive fluctuation of cash on the market. And we are all making every effort for this system to be really user-friendly, tolerant, resistant, and we are also doing our best by spending 70% of our time on this platform. Thank you very much. Indeed, user-friendliness and simpleness of that kind of transactions is very important. And the key identificator in the system would be a mobile phone number. And using the mobile phone, customers will be able to transfer money to their friends and family, or transfer it to their own accounts opened with other banks by making fast payments to pay out their loans. And payments identified by mobile phone number is already adopted in many countries of the world. So it is important to primarily understand how such systems shall interact with other providers of payment systems. And in this regard, I have a question to Yekaterina Volenets. What are the expectations of the Samsung company from this idea of development of P2P transfers by phone number? What is the vision of your company? What opportunities for business development do you recognize? Good afternoon. First of all, allow me to thank the organizers for being able to speak at this very important industry forum. I'm very happy to welcome my colleagues, many friends that I see here, and all our partners. On the 29th of September, Samsung company has celebrated 2 years of Samsung Pay services in Russia. Today, the number of transactions done via mobile payment service of us in the world is more than 1.3 billion. And we're very happy to recognize that Russian Samsung Pay is a leader in terms of operations per token and for the share of active users. Mobile payment service changes the behavior model and behavior pattern of the user in several ways. First and foremost, that is connected with the structure and methods of payments used. Samsung company has done a research, and based on this research, it became obvious that those users who use mobile payment services, those who do not use mobile payment service and use their banking cards in 47% of all cases and use cash in 30% of 100 cases. Those who have used the card in the app of Samsung Pay start using this service at each opportunity they have. And they use the bank card only in those cases when the service is not available. And as for cash payments, they allocate for no more than 13% of 100 cases. Our research also demonstrated that availability of payment technology on a smartphone is very important for the user. So 77% of respondents said that they are not going to consider purchasing a smartphone that is not compatible with a Samsung Pay service. 93% of the questions said that for their next purchase, they will consider technologically more advanced devices. More than 80% of the respondents that are active users of Samsung Pay confirmed high level of trust to the reliability of this solution, and said that they are certain that even if their mobile phone is stolen, nothing would happen to their data. Their data would be safe. And the more active is the user with Samsung Pay, the higher is the level of their trust towards us. Today, this service is available for a broad variety of devices, including devices of middle price value, of a low price segment, and even the flagship models. And we've noted an interesting pattern. According to the data of our partners, even if a user is an owner of high price segment of a smartphone, their behavior is not always the premium type payments, despite the fact that frequently they own a premium bank product. Among them, we see that they make purchases in such supermarkets like Auchan, Перекресток, Пятерочка, Lenta. They do buy fast food that traditionally do not belong to the category of premium segment of purchases. Why is that so is yet to be explained, but already today we can state that mobile payment services help our partners to better understand their customers. Today, Samsung Pay service is available for MasterCard and Visa payment cards and Mir national payment system. It is also available for payments on any payment terminal, mobile apps, and on the internet pages of internet shops. It can also be used to withdraw cash and do money transfers. Money transfers by Samsung Pay today transfers in rubles between the bank cards of the Russian banks. This service is a unique combination of technologies of Samsung Pay, tokenization service of MasterCard and Visa, and opportunities of money transfers based on the phone number that are secured by VTB Bank and Multicarta processing company. Money transfers with Samsung Pay is a very important technological step in the development of cashless industry and money transfers in particular. This service enables a user to make a money transfer in a couple of clicks without any complicated verification. Biometrical verification is sufficient without a necessity to enter or transfer the number of the card of the recipient. Apart from that, a user has an opportunity to keep track of this money transfer in an online form, and if need be, they can cancel it, provided that, of course, a recipient has not yet accepted it. A recipient can be a user of Samsung Pay or cannot be a user of Samsung Pay. They do not even have to have a Samsung device. When together with our partners we planned launching this service, our expectations were rather modest. We were hoping that in about 3 months' time after the launch, if everything goes well, about 10% of Samsung Pay users would be active users of those service, and the average bill would be around 4,000 rubles. In the first days of the launch of the service, we've already seen a very high result from the side of the users. And more than 80% of the users switched to the new version of the app in a couple of days. 2 first weeks after the launch of the service, it was used by 10% of unique users of the service, and the average bill varies from 7 to 10,000 rubles. October is almost finished, and we expect the turnover of the money transfers would be 0.5 billion rubles, and at the end of the year it would be more than 1 trillion rubles in a year's time. So all these results have exceeded all our expectations. Service is organized in a manner that is very easy to scale it to other regions, and that's exactly what we're doing right now. We're very happy to set the trend for development of our technologies with our partners. That's a good tradition for Samsung in Russia. The services available today with Samsung Pay, that includes choosing and making an application for financial services of credit organizations in Russia. That is what we're doing in partnership with Banki.ru. And that is a reliable, innovative solution that gives an opportunity to the mobile devices owners to do traditional things in a much easier way and a much safer way. Samsung is going to develop its services, and Samsung Pay in particular, so that together with our partners, we could offer our customers new opportunities and create the digital future and bring it closer already together. The efforts required for introduction of such solutions are definitely worth the effort. And as a result, the mission of Samsung Pay and our partners in Russia is to increase the level of happiness of our customers here. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Well, happiness and user satisfaction is, of course, the primary goal of any service. And happiness is not the only aspect, perhaps. It's also a combination between comfort and security, so that all the transactions reach the recipient in a secure and convenient manner. Thank you, Katya, so much for sharing with us the experience of Samsung Pay. We see mobile services developing very fast, and I see that many have already experienced that as end users. And if end users get access to such fast payment services via mobile apps that the banks will develop, I think you have a very broad horizon for development with a lot of partners. It's great working with such partners that have experience, that have had a history of developing services or platforms. Therefore, I would like to direct my next question to our international guests who are on the panel today. Ian, you have had this experience in a number of countries. We know that in the UK, you took an active part and did one of the first such systems in the world, and you launched a similar service in Thailand. Were there big differences? Did you learn from those two experiences? And what would you do differently now if you were to launch such a large-scale system today? And what would be your advice for those who only start developing such solutions?
Thank you, everybody, for giving me the opportunity to share the platform with the guests here. And thanks to everybody that's come. It's fantastic to see such a high level of interest in fast payments. As Alan mentioned, my name is Ian Gorsden. I work for Vocalink, and 15 months ago we were acquired by MasterCard and are now part of MasterCard International. So 12 years ago, quite a long time ago, 12 years ago, we were only using these things to make phone calls with, really. We had very basic applications, but really it was a phone, it was maybe a calendar, but we didn't really do a whole heap of banking or transacting on them. So when we put the UK faster payment service live in 2008, work had started on that in 2006, so hence the 12 years ago, very different kind of world outlook and world view. We designed it as a basic push credit system, so all you could really do was move money from one account to another. And the way you interacted with that was to telephone your bank and ask them to make the transfer for you, or to log on to your internet banking screens with quite a convoluted process to get on, and then type in account numbers, etc., and get that to move. It's been a very successful system from that perspective, but really the world has moved on, as you would expect, a long way in the decade that it's been live. Some of the key underlying objectives are absolutely still the same, and Vladimir referred to some of those earlier. 24/7 availability is absolutely essential to keep trust and confidence in the system, as in high levels of security, and ease of use, ease of access. So kind of smart, simple, and safe, three really key watchwords that were true 12 years ago and are still true today. But the way we expect to be able to interact with our banking systems today has dramatically transformed over that time. So what we expect from a fast payment rail has also moved on a lot in those years. So if I go back 10 years ago when we launched in the UK, a simple push payment system in effect, it was used by people to pay companies, to settle invoices, etc. It was used to move money between people, but quite low levels of transactions. Since that time, we've expanded the use of it so that corporates can gain direct access. So the audience of people that can actually directly interface with faster payments has grown from personal current account customers through to corporates. And if we look at what is expected today, that is expected to go beyond that into a world of open banking, fintech applications, access from a whole variety of players who may not be banks. So 10 years ago, we had limited functionality rail, limited access, still high security, high volume, etc., but very limited ways to interact with the service. If we contrast that now with Thailand, we went live just under 2 years ago in Thailand. Core system, very similar, a push payment system, but in addition to push payments, there are pull payments and there are requests to pay. So I can make, if I'm a biller, I can make a request to someone else to pay money to me if they owe me money, and they have the option of saying yes or no. Yeah, so some different types of payments have been introduced. We have a much richer level of data that goes across the rail. So rather than a fairly short message that was based on a card standard, we've now expanded that to be an ISO 20022 format message, so we can carry much richer quality of data. In the UK, for example, we now use that to carry check images to do same-day clearing of checks. So it's quite a versatile data standard and has allowed much richer transaction sets to be used. Over time, that allows for better integration with corporate ERP-type systems. So the benefits of these systems go well beyond a traditional P2P type payment and allow companies to pay each other and actually reconcile very smoothly and easily with their ERP systems and start to do straight-through processing from one end to the other of their supply chain. Another development over the decade has been the importance of directory services, and Ala mentioned the mobile phone number as an alias or proxy for an account. That's been a very important initiative. It took the UK about 8 years to develop that service for faster payments in the UK, because that isn't how it was envisaged. 12 years ago when we designed the system, mobile phone number was not considered to be a useful proxy. Nobody was transacting on mobile phones, so we didn't really have that concept. So that was introduced much later. If I contrast the adoptions of the UK and Thailand, Thailand had 40% of the population of the country registered within 6 months of the launch of the service. Yeah, we still haven't got that in the UK after a decade. So it shows you the difference if you can make the systems relevant to people with a directory service working on mobile phones, for example. So that's a really key difference. If I was to share some of the lessons that perhaps we've learned, we've done implementations now in the UK, in Singapore, in Thailand, and the US. It's fair to say we've learned from every one of those implementations. Some of the important considerations to bear in mind for any new service for me are being very clear on the objectives of the service. I think a decade ago in the UK, we wanted to make payments faster. It's kind of an okay objective, but it's not really an end goal. In Thailand, I think they learned from that and were far crisper in what they wanted to achieve. They wanted to bring small and medium enterprises into banking. They wanted to extend financial inclusion. They wanted to make the service accessible to as many people as possible in as short a time as possible. So their launch strategy was very different. In the UK, it was one of the pioneering systems globally. So we went very slowly, very softly with volumes. But unfortunately, that has continued through the life of the service. And it's taken us 10 years still not to get to where Thailand is in 18 months. So, yeah, really interesting contrasts in adoption and usage of the service. I think buy-in from the banks is really key. So trying to work out what's in it for banks. And that'll be a different answer depending on different banks, depending on where they start from. In Thailand, that was less of an issue. They have a military government, so it was an edict to use the service. And not only was it an edict to use the service, it was an edict to use it extremely quickly and be live in a year from when the service was announced. So that made it extremely challenging for banks, an extremely short time frame to launch a faster payment service. And another, I guess, lesson that we all learnt from that was the importance of not neglecting the testing phase. So I understand you're in a testing phase here at the moment. If people are putting pressure on Vladimir to shorten that, I would say don't do that. It's very, very important to get the accuracy and trust and confidence in these services right from the off. And if you compress the testing too much, that can cause some issues with that. So that was another lesson that we learnt. I think also focusing the use cases for the service on where you have a problem. So different countries have different start points. They have different pain points for end users in their banking service. So if P2P is a pain point, that's fine, aim at that. But many countries have problems with billing and invoicing. And if I receive a bill from a utility provider, for example, it can be quite painful for me to pay it. And the US is an example of that, where people still write a lot of checks. There's a lot of pre-printing of checks happening, a lot of money in the system that is still in transit, which fast payments can avoid if implemented correctly. They can be a great solution for billers as well, rather than sending people invoices and waiting for a check to arrive in the post, then having to reconcile it with a faster payment system with the right amount of information and a request to pay. All of that can happen immediately and at a much lower cost overall, which ultimately can benefit the end consumer. And I think finally, the last area to really cover is the importance of a good and rich data standard. So the more data you're able to carry with your payment message, the more automation and straight-through processing ultimately you can do. And that allows really for a greater variety of use cases, more automation, lower costs. And if you've got that as your base rail, then the next challenge, I think, is how you open that base rail up to fintechs, to other participants in the system. Clearly, it has to be done securely and reliably, but if you can achieve that, then you allow people to innovate over the top of your payment rail, and that's when you really see, for me, the greatest value of a fast payment solution.
Thanks very much. I believe this has been very valuable because, as Ian mentioned, technology choice determines not just the speed, the pace of introduction rather, but it also determines the potential demand if you understand what the market needs. Therefore, I would like to ask Ellie about the Australian recent introduction, or it is still undergoing, isn't it? And since we seem to believe that market demand, understanding the market profile is key, so what was it like in Australia? What did Australian banks want? Did you listen to them? And were there technological solutions only at your hand for speed, for security, or could you take into account much more? Thank you. I think it's interesting to remember that in Australia, they decided to not just build a payment system for fast payments. They chose a much more strategic vision. They decided to upgrade the payment system in general. So from that point of view, I think the Australian approach is really best in class and a truly strategic vision. And they realized that they would have to build a fast payment system with clear, specific objectives, just as Ian mentioned. And they're simple ones. The system will have to be available 24/7. It will have to be reliable. It will have to transfer information on the ISO 2022 standard, and of course simple in use for the end user. It is very important that you have a convenient system and a cheap system for the end user. But that was the first step. The second, I think, feature that they had in mind is that they devised a roadmap and a program to introduce the system. And they worked with all the stakeholders, not just the National Bank, all the commercial banks that work in Australia could take part. And this program, this campaign, was supported by an international team of consultants. And there was a number of working groups that looked at different aspects, all aspects really, not just the technology, the legal aspects. And once they were ready to submit a request for proposal, so SWIFT became the winner, and we worked with them to introduce the system. The Australian system is somewhat different from what you can see elsewhere in the world. Its first defining feature, I think, is that the Australians decided that all payments will have to go through the National Central Bank. Normally, they don't go directly through the central bank, but the Australians wanted to remove the risks. Yes, to lower the risk, rather. And they decided to send every payment, every retail payment, what have you, via central bank. And second is that in its architecture, it's a distributed system. Of course, there's core infrastructure very frequently in such systems, and Australians decided not to have a centralized system, but have a distributed one, which gives the system reliability. Because if you only have your central elements that are vulnerable at one point, then of course the risks are much higher. So the Australian solution was to have a distributed one, and they launched it early this year. The launch was successful, and as of today, we have about 250,000 payments a day. But this is still infancy, I think, for the system. It will grow, no doubt. Thank you. So there are national differences, as you can see. The next question I would like to address to Ekaterina Petelina. Visa is a global international payment system. You've been around since, what, 1956? Yes, and we've been in Russia for 30 years already. Yes, fantastic. So, a long history. When you look at what's happening in Russia with fast payments, when you look at it globally, what prospects do you see from Visa's point of view? How can we work in partnership to maximize the benefits for our customers, for the end users? Thanks, Alla. I really like this turn of discussion, because what we're talking about is a natural, organic need to be able to make payments cash-free. Visa is the biggest payment system in the world, of course, has a very strong interest in developing any fashion, any type of cashless transactions. Vladimir has already discussed how fast the market is growing here, over 25% year on year. This is very fast, and it's mostly growing through cash transactions being replaced by cashless. That's why all the members here, the national system, Raiffeisen Bank, Samsung Pay, Central Bank, Visa, everyone on this panel, we're more interested in not just sharing the pie and getting the bigger pie. We just want to make the pie bigger. This is our common goal. It's better for everyone, the end user, the central bank, and us who work in this industry. If we have a service that's reliable, that's cheap, and that's easy to use, we all would benefit from that. Paying card systems, of course, and VisaNet is our main asset. We can process 65,000 payments per second. We have also push payments technology that Ian has described, which allows for online transactions, both in P2P and P2M and M2P payments when there is some need for merchant disbursement. Well, we have the technology, and it's a growing technology. But the title of this panel is World and Us. And if I may start with us, Ekaterina has already mentioned that Russia is a very advanced market in terms of innovative payment solutions. For Samsung, it's a leader. For Visa, in terms of mobile payments, Russia is also one of the 3 global leaders. And in terms of P2P transactions, Russia is #1. This is the biggest market for us. Not just push payments, no, but P2P transactions. And why is this service developing so well in Russia? It was launched in 2008, so a few years ago, and it's been growing by 80% year on year in the last 3 years. Olga, what figures do you have at Raiffeisen? I think this is an incredible figure. So we've tripled business volume over the last 3 years, and it means that there's very strong demand. Why? Because it's instant, it's online, this is real-time payments. You receive it almost as soon as I have sent it. And it's also integrated into mobile banking. This is something you can check on your smartphone, perhaps not just once a day, 5 times a day, more. And we will be improving the service. We will now be able to connect the phone number rather than the bank card number. This is what the world seems to be going towards, not just Russian market. If you want to compare Russia with other countries globally, in terms of P2P, Russia leads, as I said. But, for instance, in terms of merchant disbursement, when there is a payment from merchant to an individual, then there are other services that work very well in other locations. Lyft, for instance, is an online taxi provider comparable in size to Uber there, and the drivers there, they receive their salaries via Visa Direct.
So they're using those fast payments based on the card technology. Another example is paying out of insurance compensations and reimbursements. Allstate's one of the largest insurance companies involved in automobile insurance in the US, is paying out to those who got in the insured situation the money in a very fast way to their cards through Visa Direct. Another example I can share is transfers within messengers or social media. In Russia, this service has been in existence for quite a while. It exists in Odnoklassniki and Vkontakte social networks. In other regions of the world, we've done that together with Facebook, where there is 1 million transactions per day happening using Visa Direct technology within the framework of Facebook. And generally, 200 countries are connected to this service. We have 1 billion users. So certainly the scale is not just on Russia, although I'm still very proud that Russia was the first market for this service. Another good example of not a merchant to person, but Square, a company called Square, a rather big American company that you probably have heard about. This is the problem of accepting of card payments with small enterprises. And this is where they also use our technology of fast payments. The small enterprise can very quickly transfer money to their own deposit account in a bank. So it is basically merchant to bank transfer. Talking about fast payment system in a way defined by Vladimir, that is being created in Russia, I can say that we fully coincide with the world trend. 30 banks in the world have a similar system. 35 countries are in process of creation of such system, including Russia. And that is definitely a system wanted by the market, and that would be useful for the market. So together we are growing this pie bigger, and each one is getting a piece of this pie. We should probably recall the experience of card payment systems. It's one part to create a railway, but it takes, let's say, many more services, those value-added services that are absolutely necessary to be created in the short to mid-term perspective in order to make it work. Those are risk mitigation services, fraud detection services, monetization services, analytical services. This is something that Ian talked about. Those are the services for increasing the level of authorization, so that you can rest assured that if you use the system, the transaction will be authorized. So by creating this rail system, we have to be aware that there are several layers on top of the actual rail on the ground, and using those services you can create a much more efficient and useful system, much more reliable system, and I would say multifaceted and diverse in its possible application. And I believe in this regard the experience of Visa company can be very useful for many. Thank you very much, Ekaterina. Indeed, you touched upon a very important issue, and that is one of the key strategic purposes of any regulator, to increase the share of cash-free operations by making them more transparent and more secure for the users. Now I'd like to ask you, Roman. You represent Raiffeisen Bank, a rather advanced bank, and your bank is participating in this pilot project. And you plan to be one of the first banks to offer such a service to your customers. What are the plans of your bank regarding development of this service? What do you plan to offer to your customers? What are the expectations? Thank you for your question. Indeed, we are having a very interesting discussion, and I followed it with a great excitement. Ekaterina from Visa said that a human being has a natural desire to make cash-free payments. Well, I believe there is a natural need to consume services, and those cash-free services are simply satisfying this demand and making it easier. We, on our hand, support this in every way, because payments and money transfers is probably the foundation of a banking business. Customers are opening up an account in business specifically for this reason. And from the payment viewpoint, our customers are very active. Just before this conference, I requested my colleagues to calculate that. We have more than 60% of non-cash payments of our customers compared to the amount of cash they withdraw in order to make cash payments. So now it's more than 60%. A year ago, it was 50-50. So we definitely see a growth of non-cash payments. And as my colleagues were saying, this growth is being stimulated and driven by development and use of mobile devices for payment purposes. And Ian also said that when you were starting your business in Thailand and you were just entering the market, everybody had mobile phones already and they were well used to use those phones. So it provided for completely different dynamics. Now, in a blank up to 600 active users, and in a year, this number of active bank users doubled, mobile banks. So the penetration is around 35% in the active users database of the bank. 200,000 or even more than 200,000 users are daily using our mobile bank app. So the innovations in payments are also closely connected with those mobile devices. And Yekaterina from Visa was saying that Russia is one of the leading countries in the use of different payment technologies. And we see that payments by means of tokens account for around 15% of all card payments. And again, this figure was doubled in a year time. So indeed, it is growing in geometrical progression, and most of you are from the banks, you know it very well. Another interesting thing we've done, an option to switch money, transfer money between two Apple devices that you can do via Bluetooth. It is a nice solution. I tried it myself. I like that. In the first month of use, 2,000 clients tried this service, so we think it will grow and develop further. It is an exciting technology. So definitely, mobile payments and non-cash payments are needed, and the system that is being developed, the fast payment system, is very much needed, because in that way, customers will be able to fulfill their payment potential via mobile phone. And the fast payment system complies with those requirements, and that means fast payments exactly as our customers wanted. And our customers will be definitely embracing this opportunity, and payment via a mobile phone number or identified by a phone number is very much in demand. It's something that Sberbank is doing, and we believe it's very right and timely that we're going to have a national system that will provide equal access to that for all banks. We have our own payment system of payments by a bank phone number available for Raiffeisen Bank customers. It is not that large scale as the one of Sberbank, of course, but still we see rapid growth there. Now we register 200,000 transactions per month, and they grow with a speed of 40 to 50% plus per quarter. So again, it's very rapid. And Yekaterina, you shared some statistics of Visa, that something was growing by 80% per year. Well, we have a growth of 40% per quarter, which is faster. Well, we all do see that it is all growing very fast, and availability of such a national system would be very useful. From the viewpoint of customer experience, how we see it is that probably our customer in a mobile bank should not really care what is the engine behind the payment that they are making. The way we see it is that a customer would have a mobile phone number as an identifier, or a QR code would also be one of the options. or some other identifier for a fast payment system, and we would route this payment, we would trace it in a most efficient and convenient way so that it is fast and cheap for our customer. Of course, a bank needs to create some logical system for that. That should be the final outcome. What we expect from this system is enhancement of customer experience by decreasing prices. And of course, that would make our offers more competitive. And it is wonderful that Central Bank is making effort to create such a platform. And it is being created together with the banks. That is a very right and proper solution that we strongly welcome. Thank you very much. I'm really happy that we have 15 minutes left before the end of the session. And I'd like to give all our participants to take questions from the audience. So we have 15 minutes for Q&A. And I'd like to share with you just a couple of outcomes that I jotted down in the course of the discussion. Indeed, there is a clear demand for fast and easy transfers from the side of the customers. This is confirmed by the numbers shared by participants of the panel representing big players on this market. It is important that the service is reliable, fast, easy to use. It is important that customer has an opportunity to do interbank transfers, and the fee has to be minimal in this case. All that would create prerequisites for growth of financial accessibility, growth of competition, and that is good, as we all were saying. We need to work hard to decrease those fees. The more players we have on the market, the more opportunities would be offered to our customers. And of course, issues of security, fault tolerance, non-stop operations, uninterrupted operations of our system, those are the options we absolutely must have. And another key criteria of this system is additional services and opportunities available for the customers. That's what we work on together with the banks, together with the market players. From the beginning, we set ourselves an objective to select the identifiers used, the services that would be in a priority. We discuss all of it together with the banks. And identifier number one is a phone number. Another option is email address, messengers, QR codes, and other possible identifiers that are to come. So it is an open list. At an early stage, of course, those would be transfers between individuals to themselves and other individuals, and later on that would also include transfers to legal entities, the invoicing that we talked about, and payments for different goods and services rendered to our customers. So those are key conclusions from our session, and myself representing a regulator, I'd like to say that I'm very much interested, together with the rest of the market, that we have as many participants as possible. So, dear colleagues, if there are any questions to any of the panel speakers, please raise your hand. We'll give you the microphone, and please make sure you introduce yourself. We'll be happy to take your questions. Hello, my name is Gleb Naruzhny. I represent VTB Bank. Is there an understanding of how would the system of tariffs for the bank interacting with the fast payment system would be organized? Are there any general plans or certain assumptions what would be the system of tariffs for the bank? I guess that's a question to me. All right. Indeed, we are developing a system of tariffs. It would be charged per transaction, and the key condition that we proceed from definition of those tariffs is that they have to be minimal for the end user, and they have to be procured on the level of the payment system considerably less than the current tariffs charged by the Bank of Russia for accounting operations from the participants. I will not be able to name specific figures, but very soon we will publish official information on that. Hello, my name is Kirill Palchony, represent Unistream company. My first question, are there any plans, once you introduce the system, to simplify the requirements on identification for money transfers without opening a bank account? And my second question, are there any plans to add transfers in other currencies rather than Russian rubles to that? I'll start from the end. Well, the settlement currency in Russia is the national currency, which is Russian ruble. So in the payment system of the Bank of Russia, all settlements are made in rubles, and fast payment systems will also be available in rubles. In the future, we do have plans to do trans-border interaction with our partners, and we plan such events. And certainly cross-border transactions would be done, taking into account different currencies, but the outcoming currency would be a national currency, and on the other end, that would be an individual, if it is a foreign recipient, receiving it in the currency of their respective country. Talking about the requirements for identification, well, there is legislation that we have to comply with, and customer of a bank is automatically going through all the requirements for identification in accordance with the current legislation and follow the procedures foreseen by the legislator in the area of combating anti-money laundering laws. And of course, we will comply with them since security is absolutely key, and we have to take into account the efforts to combat terrorist financing. Hello, my name is Kirill Seridenko, multi-card company. My question to Vladimir Komlev. I know that the second stage of development of fast payment system would be bringing of this system to the interaction between the merchant and the customer. So that is basically invoicing or acquiring. Would you please tell us how and when you plan to do that? Can you give any details on that? Because so far it is indeed all a mystery to us. Well, I would definitely say that there is a mystery around it. It's just that there is great uncertainty on that indeed. We are not clear so far what would be the best scenario, or rather scenarios, because what we're discussing right now and is being discussed with our pilot banks is that there can be a whole number of different scenarios depending on the means of doing of this transaction, of the segments. We know that if it is a fast transfer from SMEs, or let's say some grocery markets or grocery stores, or then they would shift to more civilized and traditional retail operations, then that would be two completely different scenarios. Right now, there are many questions. We are working to answer them, and I'm not ready to share any specific solutions so far, because indeed, right now, we are going through very hard daily work, and the foundation of this work is creation of the right customer experience, because we understand that doing a transfer from your phone to your colleague in a P2P segment, and how this fast payment system can become more convenient than a bank card or an integrated card payment using Apple Pay or Samsung Pay or Android Pay, all those systems that our citizens are used to. What needs to be done for a merchant to be easy and for a customer to be easier to pay it using a phone? And as we were saying today, one of the key things, and we didn't pay enough attention to that today, is happening due to the fact that we have a settlement system of the Bank of Russia that is reaching a brand new level of quality, that is a per transactional calculation between the banks. And I think it is very important once the settlements are completed, transaction is completed. So how it can reach a big merchant that has big cash desks and the information that money has arrived to his bank account and this information has to reach a cash register. Well, there are many issues of those systems to be integrated, and this is that we're thinking so far. Probably it would be a bit easier for the merchants of an easier level, like individual entrepreneurs and merchants of the kind, where a static QR code would be enough to identify this merchant, and you can use it, simply scan it with your phone and get the information on them immediately. But there are very many different exciting options for integrated solutions, and we do not have a ready-to-use manual. And we're not hiding anything, it's just that there is no such manual so far. It is a bit of a mystery for ourselves right now so far, so we're working hard on that and we invite you to join us. If I may, I'd like to add some on that, Vladimir. We've been discussing that with banks, and our colleagues were sharing the international experience, and they said that it is very important whenever you implement a certain service, you take into account the market demand, and you need to do not a service for the sake of service, but you have to proceed from specific client scenarios. And that's what we're doing right now. We're developing those scenarios. We understand what are the current priorities, what has to be done at the beginning, what can be done later. But the technological solutions and the exact procedure of transferring those information technically, of course, that would be done later in technical documentation. And as each next scenario is ready, we would share this information with the market. And that's what we do so far. Each particular service is being discussed separately, carefully defined, and we work on that together with the market. There is one more question. Hello, my name is Alexander Popov. I represent TK Center Company. Can you please speak up? TK Center Company. Look, the Bank of Russia has some additional offices that are working like banks. And right now you are developing a payment system. Tell us, looking into the future, is that possible that the Bank of Russia could acquire all other banks? Well, that's definitely not what we're talking about. Our field department, so to say, our field officers, are just our officers, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the discussion we're having right now. We are not creating a new payment system. We are creating a fast payment system that would be created based on the existing payment system of the Bank of Russia. And that would be the third service of our system, equally to the urgent and non-urgent payments. And the key difference of it would be the working mode, 24/7, 365 days per year, that is immediate interbank transfers or transfers between users, between the correspondent accounts of the bank, and immediate transfers between a remitter and a recipient. We are not going to acquire anyone, certainly not. Thank you very much for your questions. So we'd like to use this opportunity to invite all the banks to join our projects. Those of you who are still pondering on the issue, we invite you to join our discussions in implementation of further services. I hope that you, maybe not as bank representatives, but as users and individuals, will be able to make use of this service, because since the beginning of 2019, this service will be made available to all of you. And hopefully next year at the next Finnopolis Forum, we'll be able to come to the first conclusions on how this service operates, how convenient it is, and whether we are indeed tackling the objectives that we set to ourselves for us as users and citizens. Thank you very much once again. I'd like to thank all the participants of our discussion. Many thanks for an open and exciting discussion, and thank you for being with us.